Okay, you guys, I cannot wait to have you listen in on this conversation that we're going to have. I am not joking. We got on actually like a half hour ago and we have just been chatting and we're like, oh, yeah, we actually have to record something here. So, first of all, I just want to welcome Cindy to the 6570 podcast.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here and finally meet you.
I know we've been following each other and just interacting through Instagram and things for a while. I've been following the Parent Compass for a while now. So much of your work is integral to pieces of what I do. And I love the messaging that you guys have. And it's always smiles and it's always fun. It's the uplifting music. And I'm just so thankful. First off, I'll just start it off with this. I'm so thankful for you and Jen coming together and having this collaboration and writing this book and the message that you're putting out there in the world, especially now today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, the Parent Compass, my co-author is Jen Curtis. I'm Cindy Muchnick, and our backgrounds are we're both had been in the independent college counseling space for 30 plus years combined, and working with teens and tweens going through navigating high school and culminating in the college or post high school experience, whatever that might be. But in our case, most of the kids that we were working with were on the college journey. And we just started seeing, not only in the world and the college admission scandal that erupted back in early 2019 with parents behaving very badly in the journey, but also we started just seeing so many of our kids getting so stressed out and being so, overwhelmed, overexhausted, depressed, and really becoming so robotic in this whole high school journey. And these parents that were pushing and managing and trying to uplift, but, thought they were being helpful, but really creating more damage and speaking for their kids and advocating for their kids and kind of taking over their lives, that we just decided we needed to write a book to help parents behave better. And so originally the Parent Compass was an etiquette book, really to teach parents how to behave. And then it became a book of let's help parents navigate the, tween and teen years, keeping their kids' mental health in the forefront. They're, wanting to preserve that and wanting to preserve the relationship between the parents and their kids, because we only get them in our homes for a limited amount of years and then they're launched, and we want to try and do our best to have a positive relationship, by the time they leave the nest.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, here, the 6570, that's how many days are in 18 years. That's why we are intentional during all of that time. And it's our highest intensity, a time of influence that we can have. Not to say that we aren't later on, but there's a lot more influences that come in later on. They have the, adult ticket, so to speak. Just because they have that doesn't mean that they're ready to be an adult. But this 6570 is definitely the time to pack in those relationships and to really realize that you are not raising a mini me. You are not raising a protege. You are not raising what you think is right. A trophy. Yes. Thank you. You are raising a person, a different person. And, that's why I call parents architects, because we're building and designing the beginning of someone else's life. And it really is such an important job. So I want to go back real quick, because I know the college scandals that happened in 2019 were kind of a big launch point, just kind of a wake-up call, right, for you and Jen and what this was. And I want to just step in. I mean, our listeners know me. I love to step into the psychology. I do psychology, biology. I'm like, how does it work and what does it do, right? So the psychology back there, why do you think parents, and those parents in particular, but parents in general, because let's face it, parents that were watching that happening were like, oh, they got caught. That stinks for them. Or I can relate to what they were doing and why they were doing it, but they went too far and all of these things, but still parents could relate to some threads that were happening, which is, the people that you're talking to. So why do you think parents all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, it was gradual over time, but why do you think it came to that fulcrum of, I have to do this and I have to do everything for them. I'm just going to let them sit back while I'm driving the bus, and then they're going to have all these accolades that I can go brag about. I mean, tell me a little bit about this.
It's pretty upsetting and kind of twisted. I mean, Jen and I kind of analogized it a bit to the OJ car chase. Like, remember when that came on the news and we were all sort of glued to the television, like, this is insane what we're
Yeah.
watching, this, this white car just drive for hours and hours until it, I guess, runs out of gas. But this really was like a standoff and a punch to the gut, especially for professionals like me and Jen, who really cheerlead and advocate and support these kids during some pretty challenging times. And I think that, yes, it kind of probably reached this breaking point. It was obviously, I hate to give more press to the story, because I think it was, it's still, the final sentences are still being given out to these parents. I mean, these parents served real jail time. These were white collar crimes that were being committed. They were, faking test scores, faking transcripts, faking student resumes, with a mastermind involved in helping these families do it. But there was a lot of just bribery and scandal. And I think parents got to a point, or this group of parents just got to a point for, yes, there's this combination of cocktail party chatter and real ego, where a parent just feels like, my kid just is ill-equipped to do this, and so I'm going to do this for them. And the message it's sent to all these kids, and I guess teenagers worldwide, is that we don't feel they're enough.
Right.
We don't feel that who they are, as who they are, the kind of student they are, the kind of interests that they have, their authentic selves, I guess, to these parents, or parents who behave in this way, are telling their kids, we just don't think you're enough. You're not capable enough. We don't think your journey is important enough. And therefore we're going to manipulate it. We're going to, architect it in a way that's really crossing a lot of bad lines. And so the PS to really all of it is, yes, that kind of was the peak. Although I would imagine, people will argue that making donations to college campuses and legacy status and all these other things play into a much bigger broken system of the college admissions system. I mean,
Right.
The reality on all of this is that we have over 4,000 colleges in the United States, and typically parents tend to focus on like 100 of them as somehow being this magical list of schools that will make you happy and successful in life. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. And these 100 or so, are just scarce. They have limited spots, and applicants applying to, 25 colleges. I mean, ridiculous amounts of applications. And just by the numbers themselves, they have to just shrink more and more. And COVID certainly added its own additional twist to making, the college admission decision process and acceptance process absolutely out of whack. And so if parents could open their mind to schools beyond schools on a list that, they think are more important than others, most colleges in the country have over a 60% acceptance rate. So let's just broaden the scope right there, first of all. And let's look at these kids who are working so hard. They already feel the pressure. They feel it from their classmates. They feel it within themselves. They see it on the news. There's already enough pressure, and throw COVID in there. Let's, tell them how much we love them for who they are, and support what their interests are. And so the Parent Compass is really trying to teach us to appreciate the child we have in front of us, and to do some really deep self-examination as parents of who we are and what baggage we're bringing to the table before we can even parent these kids well. We've got to let go of a lot of our own biases, our own past, our own journey, because Jen and I always say, we had our turn and now it's their turn. It's not our turn anymore. So,
okay. I have so much to unpack here. No, we're staying there. Okay. So I want to get back to the fact that they, like you were saying, they forged these documents, they forged all of this material, and it really was, we don't believe in you, so we're going to fake it, and we're going to fake it until you can make it, but we're actually not going to pour what needs to, right? If you keep faking it, they will never make it. Right. That's the whole problem. They won't have those skill sets, mindsets in order to, you talk a lot about resilience in the book. Right. Yep. And so they won't have that because they're, I don't know, busy playing tennis or something.
Yeah. This is the extreme helicopter tiger, version of parenting that we're talking about. But in the Parent Compass, we're also just talking to everyday normal parents saying, be careful. Because the way you behave on the sidelines, the way you behave towards your kids' teachers, the way you behave in your home, the way you behave in the car ride. I mean, all those things, our kids see it, our kids feel it, our kids model it. And so we have to kind of keep all this in perspective. And this wonderful psychologist that we interviewed with, Dr. Dan Peters, on the Parent Footprint, told us this quote that we use a lot now, which is the only thing you have when your kids leave home, the only thing left remaining is your relationship.
Yeah.
And so you have these 18 years, like your podcast is focusing on, to build that relationship. And in that time, of course, we want our kids to learn resiliency. Of course, we want them to learn self-advocacy. Of course, we want them to learn what excites them and what really, they struggle with too, so that we can, yes, support them, but equip them, really equip them. Because they're saying that college students, they've said this for over a decade, they refer to them as teacups, that they get to college so fragile and so shaky that they're going to crack like a little dainty teacup, because parents are still, calling them to be their alarm clocks in the morning, and, getting them laundry services to do their laundry, and sending them, meals. And it's just, it has to stop. Like the insanity part has to stop. And we do all know better. So the Parent Compass just keeps reminding you. So it's an easy read in the sense that you can read it over a weekend and you can apply many of the ideas instantly. It's never too late at whatever point you're at. If you're a 6th grade parent or even a senior in high school, there's still changes that can be made. But that being said, the book is really meant to kind of be a guide to help you navigate.
Yeah. Oh, so good. And okay. So, we were talking a little bit about this beforehand. So you talk about in chapter 3, praise the journey, not the destination. So what is that destination you guys are talking about there, that we don't want to focus necessarily on that, but let's focus on the way there?
Right. So the journey part, obviously, I think we all know the journey is really all those snapshots and photographs we take along the way, right? It's all the things that are happening along the way. And it's a little bit weird because saying it that way, obviously there is some destination, and whatever that destination is, it's a destination, whether it's college or whether it's what we talk about in our final chapter, which are all these other alternative routes, trade school, the military, taking a gap year, community college. It's not just college as kind of the destination. There are these other destinations, and we don't even always know what is going to be the destination for our kids, right? Because not every one of them are ready to go to college or are gearing up in those 4 years to go to college. And so we have to be more flexible. And I think that's one of the good byproducts of COVID, is that nowadays when we say, oh, my kid's taking a gap year, or my kid's going to go, do a project for a year or whatever, most parents go, oh, that's really cool. Or, oh, what a great break for them, as opposed to, oh, like, are they not ready, or what's wrong? Now it's really embraced, I think, and much more accepted. But talking about praising the journey really means looking at your kids while they're going through just their day-to-day experiences, and not just scooping them up and fixing things, but really watching, observing, and supporting, certainly letting them know that you're there to cheerlead, you're there to support, but also when they do have these setbacks, these failures, these bad grades, these bad social experiences with friends, or a bad conversation with a teacher, that you sit with them through that and you let them feel it. And you don't just cover them in hugs and kisses and love and rainbows and try to fix it. You listen a lot, you get better listening skills in the journey, you get better, at question asking skills as parents in observing their journey. And then you are preparing them for whatever the destination might be, but you're not having the destination be this goal that everything we're doing has to do with your grades and your test scores and getting to this prize at the end. Because as we know, as parents, you have to take the long view, and the long view isn't just the view to get to college, it's the view for life, right? You're a therapist as well, but every parent wonders, like, oh my God, what's my kid going to someday say on their chair? If they're not already seeing a therapist now and they see one later, is it going to have to do with me? And we don't want to be that parent. So, we want to teach our kids to self-advocate while we're praising that journey. So those are important skills. We want to help them learn how to recover from failure in that journey. And then we really want to, I don't know, you're probably familiar with Carol Dweck and the growth mindset, but, in summary, if we focus on, things that are just short-term gains, we're not, helping our kids with the much bigger picture. And I do recommend, reading and getting to know a little bit of Carol Dweck. We've summarized it shortly in the chapter. And that's one thing I think we did well in the book, which was we went to a lot of data, a lot of experts, a lot of people outside of just our our smaller world. And Jen and I, share our parenting mistakes in the book. We share our, college counseling sessions and case studies with lots of kids that we've worked with. But we also turn to these wonderful thought leaders like Carol Dweck, like Lisa D'Amour, like Kelly Corrigan, different, people that we interviewed along the way. We interviewed teachers, we interviewed heads of school and, administrators, we interviewed kids. Like, we really tried to kind of give a more complete picture. And then we included the data to support that, but in a pretty user-friendly way. So there's not a lot of charts and numbers, but there's definitely statistics that will, bolster and support what we're talking about.
And I think, for me, the scientist in me, I love that part of the book. So yeah, going back to, I want to say, I love what you said, we had our turn, now it's their turn. But this parenthood, childhood dynamic, right? It's growth for both. And so all those things you were listing, right? You're becoming a better observer, you're becoming a better question asker, and all of those things as a parent. And I think one of the biggest and best things we can do as a parent is be vulnerable to that, right? So with my 4 daughters, there has been many, many times that I just look and I'm like, this is a hard situation. I'm not sure exactly what to do here. So I'm going to have to think on this for a while, and let's come back tomorrow. Right. Instead of just like throwing out all of these consequences or what have you. But being able to look at them and say, this is hard, or being able to apologize because you messed up. Right. Those are some of those steps along the journey, and helping them build that vulnerability and resilience so that they can get to their destination. Because I think as parents, when we have our little ones and they're so little, and it's like, when you grow up, you're going to be so blah, blah, blah. Right. And we like overshoot our influence window. And so we're talking about what they're going to do at 35, and instead of where we get to take them to, because I think it's important as parents, we do everything for them during the first half of parenthood, and during the second half of parenthood, we come alongside them and do things with them because we're transitioning and helping. And then later on, we just become the lighthouse, for them. But we overshoot. We're talking about the lighthouse period, and we're like, oh wait, what can I do during this time, during this very intentional time we have there? And I think it's really important. One of the other chapters you guys have is about how school is a job. And this is something that I have talked about before. We mentioned that I just stopped homeschooling after 7 years, loved it. Who knows, we might go back at some point, but right now we're not. But all of the conferences that we have been to as a family, that was something that was kind of encouraged as well. Like, this is your job right now. This is your focus. This is, what you can work hard to succeed at. It's not just some state mandated thing you got to go and be present for. Right. And so I want you to tell the listeners a little bit more about that from your perspective, how school is a job and how to teach that to them.
So it's really funny. I have written previous books on study skills and college essay writing and time management, and books to kind of help teens be students. And this idea of school being your job is something I presented at lots and lots of schools. In fact, my own kids kind of laugh because they sort of have the mantra now that, school is our job and you have your job. We get it, the whole thing. But it's not meant to be. I mean, when I talk about it as a job, I talk about school being a job because it's so essential to gain not just these life skills in the school setting, but these skills that you're going to have when you leave school. And what I mean by it is in school, you have, 4, 5, or 6, 7 different bosses. You have these teachers who are basically your bosses, or these coaches who are the kind of your leaders that you have to report to, right? And your job as a student is to really figure out what they want. You can go against them, you can debate, you don't have to agree with everything they say, but you do have to figure out what each of them wants. And so my oldest son, who is now a school teacher professionally, has said to me, I remember you always saying, Mom, figure out what they want, how they want, the way they want it, and give it back to them that way. And it sounded a little bit robotic when you sort of say it that way. But the reality is that you need to learn what your bosses want you to do in your work. And so some teachers want you to memorize a lot. Some teachers want you to participate a lot in class. Others want you to come in outside of class. Others want to just lecture and have you regurgitate. I mean, they have all these different styles, and in outside of school, you're going to have all these different people you co-work with, or that you answer to, or maybe you're going to be your own boss. But the point is that in that process of school, waking up and getting up and doing your job of being a student all day, you're going to figure out, what things tick for you. So your kids are going to come home telling you, this is the class I really loved, or this is the teacher I really loved, or this is the topic I really didn't love. And sometimes a great teacher can make a subject that a kid wasn't very inspired by be really inspiring. And sometimes a not so great teacher can ruin a topic that kids usually, really like. But to circle back on why it's a job is that I think our kids need to see that we get up and do something every day, whether it's managing our home, or whether it's, running our own business, or going out to the workplace, or our workplaces at home, wherever it might be. And so their job is to kind of get up and be a student. And obviously everything they learn isn't going to apply to everything in their life, but the skills they get, the life skills they get from the mistakes they make, or from the test taking, or from the communicating with their teachers, or getting along with their peers, are going to carry through for the rest of their lives. And so I just think it's a good analogy for kids to feel like, well, why am I doing this? And this is so boring. You're doing it because this is your job for right now. And you don't have to do it for forever. I mean, I think my kids sometimes look at me and think, gosh, you don't have any homework. You don't have any, and I think, yes, we all put in our time kind of in doing that. But sometimes I miss those days. Like, I want to go sit in the back of a classroom and take notes and just listen and enjoy it and appreciate, the learning. And not every kid or adult, thinks that's fun or wants to do that. But that's really where the think of school like your job kind of came from.
I'm that way too. I mean, I am a committed lifelong learner. I mean, yeah. I've thought about, I was like, maybe when I'm like, I don't know, old 70s, 80s, I'll just like sneak into college lectures.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a story. So I raised my kids in Southern California I don't think I've ever told this story on a podcast, but I raised my kids for, 20 years in Southern California. And we lived near a UC campus. And I got the course catalog, and I was really inspired to sit in the back of an art history class with like 300 students, because I studied art history. And I'm like, I just want to go and be in a dark room and have someone teach me about art. And so I found this class, and I just wandered into the back, and I brought a notebook and a pen. And my kids came home that night, and they're like, what did you do today, Mom? We're having our download. And I said, oh, I went to school today. And they said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I'm auditing a class. And they said, what? Like, wait. And they looked at me, they said, were you dressed like that? I think I was in like a dress with my purse or whatever. And they said, no, Mom, you're not blending in. You have to blend in. And so they, for that, like I did it for a couple months, and they ended up buying me a school sweatshirt from the school. And they told me that's what I need to wear to school, and that I need to carry a backpack. Even though I'm old, I need to blend in a little more. And I have to say, that like 3 to 6 month period where I took 2 different courses, I audited them. I ultimately like introduced myself to the teacher and asked, is it okay for me to sit in the back? I didn't want to just take advantage of,
Sure.
Of school tuition and funding. And I have to say, they were the greatest 6 months. I mean, I had full notebooks. My brain was right. I wasn't being tested on any, but it was just so interesting to learn for learning's sake. And I think my kids kind of got a kick out of it. That wasn't the goal. It was purely selfish for me, but it was like, I needed that. And I'm ready to go do it again. We've moved. And we moved near a different college campus. And so if you see me wandering around a college campus, I really could be a secret student. And I'm not saying, everyone should just go break in and do that locally, but, go enrich yourself as adults. We should allow ourselves that gift. If that excites us.
It's so funny. My kids laugh at me all the time, because especially being their teacher for the last 7 years, I get really jazzed about science. And so in this past year, I was able to teach on the history of science for history. And we were teaching, science. I was teaching science the whole year. And, homeschooling comes in a million different flavors, but my flavor was up at the board. This is me taking notes and you're taking notes behind me. And so it was like a more traditional, I guess. But anyway, one of my side hobbies is studying particle physics. I love it. And so my kids, I come downstairs and I'm talking about black holes, and I'm talking about, universe theories and all of this. And they're like, Mom, like, are we making dinner? But
do they think you're a big nerd? That's
yeah,
good.
and I'm totally fine with that. I'll, tattoo nerd on my forehead. That's fine.
I know.
I think science is so fascinating. But my point is, I think it's good for them to see how excited I am to learn.
Of
And
course,
yeah.
that can never hurt. And I'll just want to flip that for 1 second, Nellie, because in the book we really do talk about finding, really understanding for your kids what it is that excites them.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be very different from what excites us. Oftentimes it is. So it's not going to necessarily be particle physics for all 4 of your kids. Maybe one of them.
I don't think any of them.
Maybe none of them. But as a parent, if we can make part of our goal to hook in to what excites our kid and let them teach us. So I've had parents tell me, I've learned so much about the stock market from my kid, or I've learned so much about professional basketball from my kid, or I've learned so much about, whatever current events, because that's my kid's thing. And finding out what are the things that excite your kid, whether it's a hobby or whether it's an academic interest, and let them guide you, let them share your enthusiasm and be willing to learn from them, because that bonds you in this really special way. Of course, it's wonderful when they share your interests, because then you have that commonality and you sort of do feel this like pride and excitement that, oh, we share this special love. Like, I'm a little bit of a Broadway show junkie, and 2 of my kids, they will go to any musical at any hour of any day, professional, children's performances. It doesn't matter. Like, I am always listening to like the XM Broadway station in the car, and they will, 2 of them will accompany me to anything. Like, I know if I get 2 tickets, I'll find someone to come. My other 2 kids are like, nah, that is just not, that's not my thing. So I love that we share that. But then I also share with a different kid, whatever each of their interests are. So while it doesn't always excite me, I think that has to be one of our goals. It's only fair, right?
100%.
It's their turn.
Yes, 100%. Just because this was a thought that crossed my head, and it might have been one of our listeners too, when we were talking about how school is a job, I just want to go back there for a second, because I've had some of my clients, I almost said students, clients' kids, say this to them is, well, I'm going to be my own boss, or I don't want a boss because they want to own their own company, which I think is great. I've been an employee, I've been owner of my own company. And I think it's important then that those kids, especially that I don't want a boss, right? I want to own my own company. Well, then you have to learn how to be a leader and a follower of yourself. Right. Yeah. And so that's even more so. And so parents, instead of being shut down by that, if your kid says that, and like go harder and push and explore and have greater conversations with them even more, because they're going to have to be a leader and a follower.
Yeah.
At the same time.
And have to know how to get along with people, not just manage them, but get along well, especially if you're going to be that leader and you want people to, support the work that you're doing or support the vision that you're trying to execute. So yeah, that does make sense. It's a very pivotal time, Nellie, obviously in the world of like careers, and it's hard to have the crystal ball of knowing how it's going to affect our kids with, traditional offices really shifting. I know a lot of kids just out of college now that, still barely go into an office, and that it's sad because they're behind screens doing their first jobs, as opposed to being in an environment around other people to learn from, in real life. And so it'll just be interesting to see how it unfolds. And I think as parents, we have to be extra kind of sensitive to that. It's just our world is flipped in a lot of new ways. And they're saying that, fewer and fewer, businesses are going to go back now that we've seen how virtual works. And so I just hope for our kids' sakes, I worry because I know that socialization is so important. And I know the mentorship, and it's not that you can't get it through a computer screen, but as we all know, being, next to each other in a room, sharing the same oxygen, hopefully in a healthy way,
yes.
Is so important for everyone's growth and just for humanity to be less virtual and less tech robotic, having the screen has been a blessing, but I don't want it to also be just a curse for these kids that are getting out there, because they do need a place, I think, to go and congregate and be around other people their age and other adults that can mentor them and that they can learn from. So
Yeah.
I'm a little worried about losing the water cooler completely.
I can understand that. Okay. So to kind of close up our last thing, I want to go. So I have a 17-year-old that's going into her senior year. So I'm going to, like, if I could come and just like be a fly on your wall during this next year of my life, I will. And there's a lot of transitions that are coming up, and we're 100% focused on what do you want? What do you, she wants to be a therapist. So, we're trying to find different psychology schools and where we could do that. And she's in dual enrollment. And so we have that, to play a part in all of these things. And there's just so much to figure out as a parent, so much to figure out as a kid. And then they're going into this transition. What I want to ask you is, because of, we've brought up the pandemic a few times because it is our world, now, and I agree that it's flipped us. Is there anything different now, or anything more parents can focus on now or help their kid with, since they're going from this and still in COVID world, right?
Right.
But also now adding this traditional transition that's been going on when your kid turns around 18-ish, right? And they're heading to whatever they're doing, whether that's college or all those other options that you were talking about. But in that, with the pandemic in mind, what are just a couple key things parents can do in this senior year?
Yeah. So first of all, I think the biggest word relating to this right now, maybe two words I would throw out, would be empathy and flexibility. The empathy piece really comes from the sense that, we are not in their shoes right now, experiencing these last few years of what education has felt like in schools and behind screens. And for young people, if you want to talk about resilience, sometimes the word resilience bothers me because I feel like it's kind of become the buzzword, like, oh, you're also resilient, you're learning resilience, this and that. None of them were asking for that. None of us were asking for this. But I think in this adolescent journey, I remember when the pandemic began, thinking like, who's going to suffer the most? Like, the senior citizens are going to suffer because they're, older and, might be more frail and susceptible to this disease that could take their lives. So that's scary. These parents with these tiny toddlers at home that are never going to remember the pandemic and the way that they experienced it, but these parents have to kind of protect them and keep them at home longer. Homeschooling parents are feeling whatever, but I have to say, and maybe it's because I've worked with teens for 25 years, I honestly felt the worst for like the teens, tweens, and early college years. I just felt like, what is going to happen to these kids with this?
Totally agree.
With this shift. It's seismic. We don't even know, we're going to look back on this in 10, 20, 30 years with all this data of sort of what happened to all these kids and how did this really impact and affect them. Right now, we're still in it towards the end and short term, looking at how they're feeling. And so I guess the biggest piece I would say is first empathy, which would be to just know that what we've been through is one thing, but what our kids have been through, I think, is really expanded way and is much more significant than what we've gone through. Because going back to the quote, we had our turn. These years are so crucial in their development, and they are becoming adults and they are gaining that independence, and they want to be their own bosses, not just in the real world, but they want to be their own bosses now. They don't want us, being in charge. They want to be in charge. And it's been so uncertain that it's hard to get, sure footing in this stage. So to be there kind of as the support and as the empathy, and to give them more time and show them that grace and patience that might be hard, because we want to say, come on, college or whatever, post high school around the corner, like, let's get set up. They just may not be there yet and may need more time. And then that brings me to the second word, which should, I think, be flexibility. And, I hate to use just sort of throw these big words out without the, support under them. But the point would be that I just think the rules have completely flipped and changed. And so we just have to be way more flexible to kids choosing alternative routes, kids telling us they're not quite ready. I have two of my kids have said they feel like they have such holes in their math and in certain subjects that weren't able to be taught like face to face. and they feel like, some of them are working now in these, flipped classrooms or these environments that are exploratory learning where the kids work together and the teachers kind of sit there and only facilitate, as opposed to your traditional method of being at the board and teaching. And so I think kids have just lost a lot, and they've lost a lot of confidence along the way.
Yeah.
So if we can be flexible and express to them, like, listen, we're here. If we're exploring, in your daughter's case, these different schools to get into therapy and to get into psychology, there's going to be such a broad range, and we may stay close and local. Maybe you'll take some extra community college classes to be sure this is what you want. Maybe you don't need to specialize so soon. Let's be open to other subjects. Do you want a huge college or a small college? We're still going to ask those same questions. And I don't think that either us or our kids really know the answers. I mean, I just was so thrilled that they went back in person, right? When my kids finally got a chance to go back. So I think those are kind of the two common themes. I'd say for you with a daughter that's an entering senior, my biggest piece of advice would be get the writing done over the summer. Get as much application writing done, which means, pull up the questions from the common application, pull up the question from, your local, like in California, we have the UCs. So they have their own questions, University of California colleges, whatever essays can be written over the summer, get them done, because the school year is going to start and they don't want to be working over Thanksgiving and winter break on figuring out, their personal statement. There just is a good amount of writing. Unless you're maybe at a state school that's kind of focused just on the grades and test scores and not the writing, get a lot of those essays done. And it's hard for these kids to write a personal narrative. They've never been asked to self-reflect necessarily. They've learned their 5-paragraph essay, they've learned their argumentative essay, but to actually do a first person, 650 words that gives a glimpse of who you are, it's not your life story. It's pretty hard to do. It's a pretty challenging skill set. So I would say that would be just kind of another helpful thing to try to just get a little bit of a jump start. And then obviously, as for parents, to try to spend that senior year getting a few life skills in there, like the laundry, if you haven't hit that yet,
Yeah.
cooking some basic things. Catherine Newman, a fellow author, wrote a great book called How to Be a Person. And it's really written for middle schoolers, but I think it would be great for high schoolers and those going off to college to kind of teach you the basics of how to cook a chicken and how to, write a thank you note if you haven't learned how to do that, and, how to self-advocate and how to clean a toilet. So, those are important skills that we can help teach our kids before they go. I still get calls. In fact, yesterday, my son moved into his first apartment and he said, where do I put the dishwashing detergent? And I got a photo of these different pockets in the door of the dishwasher. And I loved getting the call. And I'm like, oh, I think it's the square one with the cap that pops open. Try putting it in there. It's like, well, there's two sides. Which side does it go in? So that's great. I'm glad he's asking. I'm glad I can teach from a distance, but we can teach some of that stuff at home too, save them a little bit of the phone call and the embarrassment. But I'm glad he asked, so without throwing him under the bus.
That's so funny.
Anyway.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much. That is a wonderful advice, by the way. And we will definitely, take advantage of that. But thank you so much for being here. You guys, if you have not read The Parent Compass yet, go get it. It is such a good book. And I promise, will find nuggets of wisdom in each and every chapter that you can apply and you can start using, and even more, you can help a friend with, right? Help your sister or your brother out with their kids too, right? And so if we can start being more of a grassroots parents helping parents world, it's going to be a lot better for ourselves and for our kids. So thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you so much, Nellie. And what you said about grassroots, this is a movement. The Parent Compass is a movement, and we're trying to spread it like wildfire. And these wonderful book clubs have been springing up where parents are helping parents, saying, let's talk about this. Let's talk about how hard this is. Let's be, on the park bench together, and let's, help our kids and help ourselves, along this journey in the appropriate ways without crossing those lines that, and every day we make mistakes. Like I'm not perfect. Jen's not perfect. We all know this is, a trial and error in some ways, but hopefully the Parent Compass can be, a good guidebook to kind of keep us on the course.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Nellie.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for being here for another episode. We'll be back next week with another episode of the 6570 Family Project podcast. Remember, you guys, keep teaching, keep laughing, keep loving, and above all, remember to keep showing up with intention in this 6570 parenthood childhood experience because they need you. I'll see you next week.